Hello and welcome to the Better in Business podcast. Today's episode is part 2 of a 7-part series on business fundamentals. Okay, so if you haven't listened to part 1, please go back and do that. Feel free to speed me up 1.2 speed, but do listen. This is designed to help you do better in business. I want you to think of this 7-part series as a mini course in its own right. Okay, so today we're diving into number 2 on the 7 deadly cash flow sins list. Okay, in order to help you to do better in business. So listen up, my friends, and let's jump in. You've tuned into the Better in Business podcast, and I'm your host, Jeannie Savage. I'm a multi-award winning business veteran and head of the Strategic Bookkeeper Network. My network of strategic bookkeepers is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs do better in business. This podcast aims to challenge your thinking. If you're not thinking the right way, how can you act the right way? Each episode will dive into key drivers of success, which I also call the rules of the game. Learn the rules and play to win. Let's go. I like to start every episode by reminding you that it is globally recognized that pillar number 1 for success is up-to-date, accurate bookkeeping, which is the only way you can see how your business is performing in terms of profit and cash. If your books aren't right up to date, visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper. Fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper. Bookkeeping is a cost, whereas strategic bookkeeping is an investment that averages a 10x return on the fees. Okay, so number 2 on the list of deadly sins, because I know you have absolutely listened to the first in this series, yeah? So this is going to be a fast and furious and impactful episode, all right? Because in that first episode, I shared some foundational stuff that's really important. So the number 2 sin is around expenses. Yeah. So let's talk about that one now. So as I record this, I'm looking at the business fundamentals training slides again, just for inspiration. Okay. So in terms of expenses and the sin, I'm going to ask you a question and I'm simply going to ask you to score yourself around how you are going. If you can hear any construction noise, I apologize. I just grabbed my little portable podcast room. I'm so low tech over here. So, okay, expenses. Are you thoroughly looking at your expenses each month to capture redundant subscriptions, reduce and amalgamate costs, and monitor expenses as a percentage of revenue based on your industry benchmarks? Now, I kind of expect a lot of people to go, Jeannie, I'm falling asleep. You should be used on insomniacs right now, because that's such a boring question. It's such a boring sentence, blah. I just want to focus on sales. That's fun, right? But let's just reframe that a bit. And before we do, because I need you to score yourself, if you are, yes, 1, you score 1. If you're not, you score 0. But I'll tell you something about when I was working with a client 10 or so years ago, and this is how the strategic bookkeeping methodology was born when I was working with a client. So basically what happened is, in the space of 12 months, yeah, and listen up because you can do this too sometimes in your business, depending on what's happening. So in the space of 12 months, strategic bookkeeping helped Sam reduce his expenses by $240,000, yeah, putting him back in the black to pull 6-figure profits and lots of time wealth out of his 24/7 gym. So this is what happens when you focus on expenses, but I'm going to tell you some other stuff. So we're just going to go back for a minute. So basically what you need to do in your business, non-negotiable, black and white, it's one of the things I love about finance. Yeah. And someone actually said to me today, Jeannie, you've got this ability to look at a business and quickly analyze what needs to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, yes, but I also go in like a bulldozer, because one of the things I love about especially the numbers, yeah, is it's lots of yeses and nos, black and white, and rules. So it's like your books are up to date or they're not. Your books are accurate or they're not. And I go in like a bulldozer, and it's like, okay, if they're not up to date, you need to get them up to date. And if you can't do it yourself, then I'm doing it, and you've got this time frame, right? The good thing about that is there's no gray, because when there is gray, my friends, it is so much harder to know what to do to get the result, right? So I know that if I get a client to get up-to-date books and accurate books, then I've got the numbers to look at. Then we can figure out what's going on in the business and we can quickly increase profit, increase cash. And in many times, that's the difference between staying open and closed. So everything is clear, yeah? Whereas, for example, when we're working around business operations and brand and marketing and selling, there's a lot more gray and a lot more layering, okay? So why did I tell you that? That's because what I'm saying is you have to look at your financial reports monthly. And the only way you can do that is if your numbers are up to date and accurate. Okay. So if they're not up to date and accurate, stop everything, do that. But you have to, this is a rule of the game, non-negotiable. If you want to succeed in business, if you want to not be basically wasting money, yeah. So even successful businesses, I brought on a great entrepreneur, well, been working with him for years. Finally, he opted into strategy and his business was already doing well. But we scaled it to the next stage and we scaled the profit and the time wealth, yeah, by holding them accountable to the numbers and working more strategically. So you have to sit down, you have to look at your profit and loss and all the other parts of your financials. You have to look at your expenses, being your cost of sales and your operating costs. And you have to be accountable to, number one, whether they should all be there. So one thing that we see a lot of, and I would suspect almost every business will definitely, if they're not looking at their expenses every month, and this has happened to me several times. Okay, so what I'm about to tell you has happened to me several times, and I work really hard with my team to keep them educated to prevent this from happening. And almost every business owner and actually human on the planet these days is suffering from this. Subscriptions that they don't know they either subscribe to or they still have. Can you relate to that? Have you ever been like, I didn't know I was being charged for that? Well, if you're not looking at your numbers, if you're allowing your bookkeeper or accountant, or you are just like allocating those expenses in your books without really looking at them, you can bet your bottom dollar that you're losing thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a year. And when it happens to me, I get very pissed off, okay? We have standard operating procedures and cybercrime policies in place, and we work quite strictly with our clients to make sure they understand that if they're not going to pay attention, they're probably going to be losing money. Little own the cyber fraud that happens. I mean, we have got so many systems and processes, so has every strategic bookkeeper that is certified under me all around the world in order to help our clients to find that money that they're losing and to prevent cybercrime happening and so on. So those redundant subscriptions are one of the things that you'll find when you pay attention to those expenses every month, okay? The other thing is you'll find expenses that you could reduce or amalgamate. An example, we did it where we were using Dropbox years and years ago, and it was amazing. But then G Suite evolved and we were using Gmail already and paying for it. So I realized that we could actually migrate 100% over to the G Suite environment for our storage needs as well as everything else and save thousands and thousands of dollars a year. And actually G Suite ended up being an amazing environment as well. Okay, so amalgamating costs. And then beyond that, there's a whole lot of other stuff, which I'll kind of scratch the surface of now. And I'll relate it to what I do in my business and what strategic bookkeepers do with their clients, okay? So you've got cost of sales and then you've got operating costs. So in this case, let's say you are a plumber, then you're going to have cost of sales, which is realistically your staff and materials, okay? Now, in this deadly sin I just said, and you may not have taken it in because it's quite a lot, is that you need to monitor your expenses as a percentage of turnover based on industry benchmarks. So with that cost of sales, if you're a plumber and you've got, materials and wages, then you want to get your strategic bookkeeper to look at your industry benchmarks, okay? So for plumbers, for example, we can see what on average all plumbers for each turnover range are spending on the cost of sales. So then we know what your target should be, right? So let's say your overall cost of sales are 50%. And industry benchmarks and the rule of thirds tells us that it should be 33%, then we need to look at what's pushing it up. So is it inefficiency? Is it the wrong pricing strategy? Yeah. Is it that you're being a B leader and a B manager when you need to be an A manager and A leader? That's a bitter pill to swallow. Guess what? I've been a B leader and a B manager before, but I am now an A manager and an A leader, and I have an A team. The only way that you will recruit and manage an A team is to be an A leader and an A manager yourself, okay? And this is something that I teach strategic bookkeepers and my strategic bookkeeping network globally so that they have the education and the power to support you. So the reason that your cost of sales is higher than it should be can be many, many reasons, okay? And it's only through looking at your financials monthly, looking at your expenses, that you can dive into those numbers, go on a journey of question and answer, use your strategic bookkeeper who is the expert in the numbers. You're the expert in your business. She's the expert in your numbers. You're going to have some really good gut feels. That's what I always see with entrepreneurs. And then our job is also, when we shine a light on those numbers, we're actually able to give you the proof for your gut feel and help you with the action that you need to take, and then hold you accountable to taking that action. Now, I told you this will be fast and furious, so I'm going to begin to wrap up the podcast. So with the 7 deadly sins, if you are looking at your financial reports on a monthly basis, right, thoroughly, in order to look for redundant subscriptions that we just talked about, reduce and amalgamate costs that we just talked about, and monitor those expenses as a percentage of turnover based on industry benchmarks and the rule of third. If you're doing all that, woohoo, score yourself a 1, you rock and roll. If you're not doing it, score yourself a 0. Now, what are you going to do if you're committing that deadly sin? So let's think about that together, okay? I don't have any notes on that right now, but ultimately the big picture is you need to play by the rules of the game to win the game, all right? So successful business owners know and use their numbers, and you need to know and use your numbers, okay? Looking at your expenses monthly with a strategic bookkeeper, like when I look at my history and I'm remembering the times that I have gone into businesses, sometimes it was like free. I just did a meeting. I saved a business $100,000 a year in 15 minutes once. And that was expenses, okay? So actually this looking at the expenses is often where the really quick and big wins are. So in one session with your strategic bookkeeper, that can be what 10x's your fees with him or her, okay, over the 12 months. So you'll hear me sometimes rattle on about how bookkeeping, which is the up-to-date accurate numbers, is a cost. Strategic bookkeeping is an investment. And I can tell you right now, the quickest win and the quickest return actually happens here in this sin, okay? Because when we identify how to really quickly and effectively reduce costs, suddenly you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, $100,000 less in expenses. Yeah, your strategic bookkeeper is costing you X and you've just 10x'd, okay? Or at least at bare ass minimum, often in one session, we have made you your entire year fees back, okay? So I think you'll probably be able to hear my passion for that. So I think for me, the action I'd like you to take is to really consider whether you are going to, so there are 3 A's to change: awareness, acceptance, action. I've made you aware of this sin. Yeah, I've made you aware that if you're not looking at your financials monthly, you have to do that. Yeah, I've made you aware that if your books aren't up to date and accurate, you have to do that. And so now it's time for you to accept that. You can either say, I don't accept that. I think I don't ever have to look at my numbers. Yeah, I think I can just focus on sales. Yeah, but if you do accept that, then the 3rd A is action. Yeah. And so in terms of taking action, absolutely do what I do. I work with a strategic bookkeeper, okay? Even though I am the strategic bookkeeper, okay? Because when I wear the entrepreneur hat, I want to turn up and follow the rules of the game. So I recommend, if you're already working with your strategic bookkeeper and you want to get more out of her or him, I recommend that you talk to them. Definitely talk to them about doing a business health check, okay, and getting a free results call, or just finding out more about how they can help you more and more and more and more, okay? Because there's a lot on the menu when it comes to how we can work with you strategically. Yeah, how strategic bookkeepers all around the world can work with you strategically. If you don't have a strategic bookkeeper right now, you can reach out to me and I'll connect you with one. So that's a wrap on that 7 deadly sin around expenses, and I'll see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. I would love to help you start doing better in business right now by giving you a free little ebook. It's a how-to guide. It's called The 7 Deadly Cash Flow Sins. And also I've developed a business health check for you. It's super high value. Both are available at betterinbusiness.global. If you would like to fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper to start enjoying a return on investment and get the support you need to optimize your business cash and profit and time well, simply visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper near you. I'll see you in the next episode.